welcome back to another outdoor philosophy here on this cold. It became winter all of a sudden, I'm telling you. So today we want to continue in our discussion on universal basic income. I got a chance to look at a couple of articles here. I'm going to pull these up on the phone here. So pardon me, I'm going to look down. So one of these came from a researcher this is reported in Psychology Today. And this was an interesting one because he looks at three different elements of universal basic income. Now, if you remember last time we talked about how some of the shortcomings I saw is that it kind of assumes that everybody just absolutely just wants to be the best person they can be. And in my experience, very few people want to be the best person they can be. I mean, it's a sad reality, but that's been my experience looking at trends. I've worked with a lot of people in lower income areas. I've worked with a lot of people. I've done a lot of community service work. With families, with kids and things. And one of the things that I found is that there are a number of people who just want to be the best they can be, and there's a whole lot of people who just want to have as much fun as they can have, because existentialism has taken over our world. And so we have to understand that. But with that being said, this researcher here, and this is written by Matthew Smith, and he does a lot of discussions around the area. He's looking at universal basic income, dealing with the major factors of mental illness. So that's what he's focusing on. So he basically says there are a few different areas where social psychiatry research projects are surrounding. Those are in poverty, inequality, social isolation. They only listed three, and they actually said four here in their article. So we'll just go with those three. Poverty, inequality, and social isolation can all lead to mental health problems. And I can understand that. You know, if you're constantly poor and you're constantly wondering where you're going to eat from, that'll mess with your head. It does weird things to you. We can say the same thing for inequality in a way. I buy the inequality argument a little bit less, because there's a point in time when, you know what, if we have a true meritocracy system, inequality completely fades to nothing. In a meritocracy, in fact, this is a funny aside. I'll go ahead and tell this, even if it takes up most of our time. When I went to college, my freshman year, we had our first ever black president. Of course, black president, he's pushing a lot of your black agenda into the university. And the biggest thing that he did is he made everybody there read a book called Ditch Digger's Daughters, which was not a bad book at all, honestly. We had to read it. We had to do book reports on it, all this kind of stuff. It's all about, you know, this empowered black family. And the overall premise of this book, and I have to say I'm glad I read it, because it's so fascinating today to see what they're saying is inequality today versus inequality then. And what that book truly was, and this is a college environment. I mean, granted, this is like, 20 years ago or something like that. In a college environment, it was a situation where he was literally saying a meritocracy. He said over and over that this ditch digger who had 4 daughters and wanted his daughters to be doctors. And I think 3 of them ended up being doctors of some form. One of them, you know, a psychologist, one of them a medical doctor, one of them a dentist, and I don't know what the last one was off the top. I can't say it was the best book I've ever read, but it was not bad at all. And so one of the things that the father always said over and over is, I want you to be a doctor because when somebody is getting ill, nobody asks the color of your skin. They just want to know, do you know medicine? The unfortunate reality is nowadays, when we get into all of these things, we're doing away with meritocracy. We're starting to sit here and say, oh, but the color of your skin matters. You don't have enough people of this color skin. You don't have enough people of this identity, gender, whatever. Sorry, my thoughts are escaping me right now. But the fact of the matter is, when we start looking at somebody's race and we start looking at their sexual preferences and their various desires rather than the job that they can do, we're completely missing the mark. This black president says he gave us an example of a black family that succeeded through their meritocracy. That's what we need. I don't care what color your skin is, but I want you to know, if I go to the hospital, you know, I'm in a bad wreck or something, and a doctor comes in, I'm going to say, excuse me, you seem too white. I need somebody who identifies as gay for you to work on me. But sir, I have these massive qualifications and hundreds of years of experience. I don't really care. I need somebody who's gay instead. It doesn't make sense. And that's the direction they want to go in. And so I'm going to completely radically disagree with this part about inequality, because inequality fades away in a meritocracy. And that's what we need. I don't care who you are. I don't care what your preferences are. I don't care what color your skin is. I care if you accomplish the task set out before us. And this last one is social isolation, which again, social isolation also can lead to mental illness. This is why we have a concern when people are sitting in the back and not socializing. Now, I had a friend who, in his high school, they were all concerned, you're not socializing enough. He's like, these people are crazy. I don't want to socialize them. They're nuts. They're nuts. And he was doing just fine on his own, and he's got a good friend group, enjoys it and whatever else. But in this article, back to this article, what this article is looking at is universal basic income as a means to alleviate these problems. Again, I'm going to disagree with this inequality point because I think it's a moot issue. But definitely looking at poverty and social isolation, and oftentimes social isolation comes out of this poverty. And so universal basic income at its core wants to seek to alleviate poverty. And a person who's always waking up in the morning and wondering, so I was, as an example, I watched somebody the other day on a video and he was all sick and concerns like, I cannot miss going to my day job tomorrow. I just can't afford to take the day off for bills to pay. There's a person who is going to have to go into work in a food industry being sick because he can't afford to take a day off of work. That's a problem. We have to deal with that type of problem. Universal basic income is something that can deal with that problem. But there's other problems it can do. And so when I start reading articles like this that are saying that universal basic income is absolutely going to solve all of these problems, it is absolutely the key, the winner, the thing that solves all of these issues, and they're refusing to look at a downside. It almost looks like a political system where your opponent is the complete devil no matter what, and you can't find a single thing they did right. Well, there are positives and negatives to universal basic income, and until I see an argument that is truly balanced, I'm not going to sit here and say we need to do universal basic income because that's going to help alleviate poverty and inequality and social isolation, and our economy is going to jump out of nothingness. And a lot of these articles are going back and referencing there's some experiments in Canada, which I'm going to look into. There's some experiments in Finland, which I'm going to look into in more detail. The one I'm going to look at here is I saw enough about the one in Finland to say this is not UBI. The Finland is a welfare replacement plan. This was people were given income if they were qualifying for welfare, to the best of my knowledge. I could be wrong, and I will be looking for that eventually as the series continues. But his overall point here is that looking at all of these different universal basic income studies, he observes that none of these are actually looking at the mental health of the people, but he notices that looking at the research and the results is that people always tended to be happier at the end of the experiments. In other words, the social mental health of people improved during the UBI research projects. And that's something that is worth examination. And so his ultimate point is that there's people, we're starting to see more and more what some people would say mental illness leading to problems. And by the way, this is not a universal thing in this field. I actually do work for one of the societies that deals with mental disorders, and they had me post on their web pages, and so I got a chance to read them, and they were fascinating. A denouncement of this mental illness leads to violence thing that we've been throwing out lately. It's become a meme because people want to say, there's mental illness. We got so much mental illness. We got to have red flag laws. And this group condemns red flag laws because mental illness does not necessarily mean violence. And we have to recognize that. But in light of the fact that none of these UBI research projects looked at the mental health of people, they didn't look at a lot of these different factors that the psychologists and psychiatrists are looking into, it's worthy of taking these projects and running it through these filters and examining it. So he actually identifies here what the issues are. He says that now in his idea, UBI is granting basic income to everybody, even if you're wealthy. If you're going to do it, that's how you do it. He says, first, it reduces poverty and moreover eliminates the anxiety associated with changes to the welfare system. People simply get their UBI, no questions asked. In other words, I don't have to wonder where the money's going to come from to pay rent next week or all these things. Maybe But don't forget our argument last time that just if you give a poverty-minded person a lump sum money, they'll go and blow it on whatever else and still not be able to meet their rent. And this is a slippery slope down the path of socialism, which is a very bad thing, and we do not need to be going there. Now, secondly, he says it reduces inequality part. Let's read this, see if I agree with it or not. I don't remember if I've read this part yet. It reduces inequality partly because it is given to everyone no matter their income. I agree with his statement. If that is what he's using as inequality, I'm going to agree with him on his statement. And that was what was different. The Finland study was not inequality. The Finland study focused on giving a UBI only to the welfare state, not to the wealthy. And it gives people opportunity to move up the social ladder by accessing education, starting their own business, engaging in creative and artistic endeavors, and switching careers. This is the positive I was pointing out. If you give a universal basic income to a person who is truly desiring to better themselves and find new opportunities in his life, universal basic income is going to help him. But if a person is not inclined to do these types of things, and most people are not interested in improving themselves. They just want to go have fun. They want to live for the weekend. They want to party it up. They want to get the money and buy a bunch of booze, a bunch of drugs, a bunch of movies, a bunch of junk food, and have a big old party. That's what most people want to do. For the people who want to legitimately improve themselves, improve their life, start a business, go to school, a UBI is a massively, massively socially beneficial thing. But to carte blanche, give it out to everybody, I think will cause more problems than it will solve. That's my general thought. He says, finally, it provides people with economic means to engage in their communities more. This is that last part where not everybody wants to be involved in the community. Most people do not want to be involved in the community. They don't want to donate their time. They want to go have fun. All of these articles with all of these positive benefits of UBI is forgetting the basic human nature of people. Particularly poverty-minded people, they just want to go and have fun. You give them a UBI, they blow it on riotous living. It goes right on back to Luke 15. Look at the parable of the lost son. He takes all his money and he just blows it. He wasn't looking for opportunity. If he was a person that really wanted to succeed in life, he could have taken that opportunity and built on it. He could have done what Jacob did, starting with nothing, very little, and building up and amassing wealth by doing it right. But a lot of your poverty-minded people who need this resource the most are not community-minded people, because the mindset is why you're poverty-stricken. The mindset that you have. I was not doing well financially when I served for over a decade in Big Brothers Big Sisters. I wasn't doing amazingly well financially. You figure out how to make that stuff work. Just because you have money doesn't mean you're going to go out and, I'm going to go serve in my community now because my basic needs are met. No, that's not going to happen to most people. So overall, I think that there's some positives that can be seen, but overall, I think that these people are missing out on the fundamental, basic human nature element that's completely missing. That's my thought so far. So far I'm leaning on, no, we probably shouldn't do it. Even though there's could be some potential positives, I don't think it's worth doing it, especially because it's going to cause a greater tax burden on the people that it would actually help the most. It's going to cause the least tax burden on the people it would actually hurt the most, and it's going to cause a further tax burden on the people who don't really care one way or the other. So I think overall, probably not the best thing. But let's continue looking at this through some more films. I actually found an article looking at UBI through the lens of Maslow's Law. I'm probably going to have the same arguments to say here. So if it's a different enough discussion, we'll do that again. If not, we'll look at some other aspects. Let me know your thoughts and comments down below.